There is a place in Wales like no other. It's here, St Fagans, National Museum of History in Cardiff, and one of my favourite places. Now, like all museums across the country, it's been closed. Their exhibits unloved and untouched. But as we emerge into this new world, I've been given the chance to explore the site before it fully reopens. St Fagans exudes the culture and identity of Wales, its breathtaking beauty, and its communities of workers, believers, players, poets, and other creatives. And while the buildings and objects exhibited here may be steeped in Welsh history, they also have a powerful contemporary relevance. They resonate with stored wisdom. They sound warnings and shed light. But most of all, they show the vital importance and occasional peril of community life. St Fagans is one of the UK's most popular heritage attractions and home to more than 40 faithfully re-erected historical buildings carried in from all over Wales and rebuilt brick by brick. From traditional cottages to a chapel, farmhouses to a pigsty, and very soon, a 19th century pub. These are buildings in which people lived, loved, worked, and died. Buildings that bore witness to powerful personal life stories, large social gatherings, deep economic depressions, calamitous world wars, and a deadly pandemic. What can we learn from them? The lifestyle, culture, and architecture of Wales and St Fagans tells a story of both then and now. I used to love coming to this row of cottages when we were on school trips, because we used to run, like many of the kids, in and out of their homes to check out the different fashions and technologies through the decades. And there are still plenty of tight-knit communities throughout Britain that live in terraced houses like this, bustling with noise and life. Inside, in these faithfully dressed houses, are clear echoes of family life. This tiny space, the heart and hearth of the home. Meals prepared and shared here. A weekly wash in a tin bath in front of the fire. Lives intertwined. But how did this all play out in a pandemic? When the Spanish flu hit Wales in 1918, did close-knit community life help or hinder its spread? Well, evidence suggests that the Welsh mining towns suffered more than most. In 1918, nobody realised the contagion was viral. There were some social distancing measures in place, but the very fact that lives were so tightly bound accelerated the spread of the epidemic. Yet, what close community life was able to offer was solace and support. If a family lost a father or mother to disease or to an industrial accident, they would be looked after. St Fagans' ethos is that the museum is created with the people of Wales, and the Oakdale Workmen's Institute was built by and for a small mining community in Monmouthshire over 100 years ago, and it was brought here brick by brick when the institute finally closed. It's extraordinary to think that the foundation stone was laid in a time of crisis. It was the middle of World War I, so this place became a lifeline where people could come to be supported, entertained, and educated. Like many institutions of its kind, it's a monument to working-class ambition and self-sufficiency. It celebrates a proud autodidactic tradition. Locally known as the Stute, it was the focal point for village life. This concert hall occupies the whole of the first floor. It would have been the venue for entertainment. Concerts, choirs, am-dram and ceremonies. And downstairs there's also billiards and the reading room. The secretary's office, once an epicentre of activity. I can almost hear the clatter of the typewriter. The room is dominated by the imposing safe that held the miners' hard-earned weekly subs. And finally, the library. Hello, Manad.
Hello.
So, the seat of learning, here we are. Tell me more about this space.
Well, we're in the library here of the Miners' Institute from Oakdale.
And when was it built and who paid for it?
Well, the first stone was laid in 1916 and it was opened then in 1917, which is amazing because it was during the First World War, wasn't it? Yeah. But it was paid for by the miners themselves. They'd saved a penny a week from their wages and accumulated just over £1,500. And they loaned £3,000 from the owners of the ironworks as well, because they wanted to have workers that were self-educated, were sober, and they were happy.
So they were encouraged by the mine owners?
Yes, of course, yes.
It must be fascinating going through the collections in these kind of places.
Yes, I mean, starting off, you've got the more religious books. And then as things go on, you've got more political books in the library as well. There's loads of engineering books, so there's self-education as well. Then by the 1950s, they allowed children to come in to the library, so there were far more children's books as well.
I love looking at the types of books in places like this. We've got this wonderful one, Pillar of Fire. You mentioned the religious books. Have a listen to this. Who is like the Lord amongst the gods? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders? That's just the beginning. It's interesting to visit a place like this, to be reminded of this sort of perennial interest in self-education and enlightenment and the love of the word, the power of a turn of phrase that we have in Wales.
I mean, self-education has always been something that I think, especially in industrial communities, that you see that they want to strive and to educate themselves and to ensure that their children have a better life, really. Playing games, chess, drafts. Billiards was the most popular thing here.
Were they allowed to gamble on the billiards there?
No, gambling was definitely a no-no. They even went so far as cutting out the gambling pages from the newspapers.
Really? So it's not just a library, a seat of learning, it's a hub of the community?
Yes, it was the heart of the village.
The museum itself came about through a donation. The Elizabethan castle, along with its land, was gifted to the National Museum of Wales in 1946 by the Earl of Plymouth. From there it has grown with the help of further donations from the public to encompass 100 acres. And the joy of St Fagans is in the discovery of a different chapter in history around every corner. It's full of surprises and steeped in stories that span 240,000 years. St Fagans is not just about historical buildings. There are 3 contemporary galleries on site. This one is home to an eclectic mix of objects and artifacts. My eye is drawn to a gorgeous 18th century harp. It's a triple harp with 3 rows of strings. And the Welsh tradition of playing them owes its survival to the Romany families of Wales. This instrument belongs to John Roberts, a descendant of Abram Wood, one of the first of the Roma to settle here. There were about 20 harpists in the family. Carrying their harps on their backs, they travelled from farm to farm, helping with the harvest by day and entertaining the farmers with their harps by night. John Roberts and his family also played for Queen Victoria. They were highly regarded across Britain, but I love the image of a community working together and at the end of a day's work, enjoying the mutual reward of music. Also in this gallery, there's a full-size caravan. It may at first glance look like a rather prosaic object to share space with the Celtic gold and the Bronze Age artefacts, but as a slice of social history, it's precious. This 1950s footage depicts the caravan's owners, the Dodds family from Cardiff. They were unusual in that they were early adopters of home movie technology, but also typical in their decision to holiday each year in Wales. These were the days where a staycation was what everyone did. This Welsh caravan becomes an emblem to the art of holiday making in our homeland. And poet Dylan Thomas has immortalised that universal British seaside experience. A tuck of dresses, a rolling of trousers, a compromise of paddlers, a sunburn of girls and a lark of boys, a silent hullabaloo of balloons. I remember the sea telling lies in a shell held to my ear for a whole harmonious hollow minute by a small wet girl in an enormous bathing suit marked corporation property. Every corner of this gallery offers up a celebration of familiar objects used in everyday life. From this beautiful 1930s Welsh-Italian coffee machine to a communal hospital teapot. The row of high street shops continues the theme, housing the things we still rely on today, from groceries to hardware, and perhaps an exchange of gossip with the shopkeeper. The latest building to be transported here to St Fagans is another powerful totem of recreation. It's the pub, a nexus like no other and the place we come together to love, laugh, listen and touch, something we've been missing a lot in these last few months. So I'm particularly thrilled that St Fagans have thought it prudent enough to acquire one, and David William has invited me to find out more. And it's apparently time for me to change my hat. So, David, you brought me to a building site.
I know, it's good, isn't it?
What's happening here?
This is our latest building project. It's called the Vulcan Hotel.
I recognise that name.
Yes, it's a legendary pub from Cardiff. It was first licensed as an alehouse in 1853, and it was called the Vulcan Inn at the time.
Yeah.
And it served a community called Newtown. We have Grangetown and Butetown still existing today.
Yeah.
But Newtown, Crockherb Town and Temperance Town were all demolished.
That's why I have never heard of it.
No, and Newtown was a thriving multicultural community of about 200 houses.
Yeah.
To outsiders, it was called Little Island because it was chock full of people from Ireland who'd come over to build the docks in Cardiff. Then in its more recent history, it was a centre for the Welsh music scene and loads of famous bands drunk there.
It was one of the classic old pubs in Cardiff, and a lot of musicians used to go. Because it is the hub of the community, isn't it?
Pubs are a venue that keep communities together. They provide a space where we can make friends, continue to be friends and strengthen community bonds. Outside of work, outside of the chapel, it's where you can be yourself and let your hair down. They're really important places.
Tell me why the Vulcan has ended up here.
Well, we've always wanted a pub in the museum, and the Vulcan's such a well-liked and remembered pub in Cardiff. It's such a shame to see it knocked down. And we were invited to come and dismantle the building and re-erect it here.
Now that you're rebuilding it, tell us a bit more about what it will look like.
It'll look like as it did in 1915. From the outside, it'll look like the Vulcan that we're familiar with. But that's when the look of the Vulcan was established.
Yeah.
So the lovely colourful tiles on the outside.
And remind me of the interior that's going to be here. Not smoking inside.
There would have been lots of smoking
Only
inside.
men, little cottages.
Yes, there'll be little cottages and things. And some of the woodwork we've had to clean really thoroughly because of 100 years of nicotine. But the floor would be spit and sawdust.
Yeah.
The wooden floor then with sawdust on it.
And what ales are you going to be selling?
Well, we're working on that at the minute. We'd like to brew our own beer,
Good idea.
replicating what was sold there originally. The brewery at the time was called Nell's. So we'll be selling real ales.
Fantastic. When's the grand opening?
It'll be in 2023, which
Yeah.
sounds far away, but it'll be here very soon, and we'd love to have you back.
I'd love to come. First round's on me, OK?
Brilliant, deal.
Not far from the pub is the Gweithdy, or workshop, a gallery celebrating the skills of Welsh makers across millennia. In here are some of the oldest objects found in Wales. This small item showcases astonishing and enduring craftsmanship. 2,000 years old and found on Mount Snowdon, it's part of a handle, which once would have been attached to a bowl. Here's how it may have looked. Made of Welsh bronze and iron, it shows how the maker had perfected the technique of applying red glass inlays to create vivid design detail. There's also playful humour in this design. The handle seems to depict a wild cat. Cats were sacred creatures in Celtic folklore, proud, independent beings commanding respect. Well worthy of symbolic representation in high-status objects like this bowl. Was it a tribal treasure, deliberately buried high on a mountainside as an offering to the gods? If so, the tribespeople must have been seeking to procure a substantial favour from their deities, or desperate to express their devotion. But whether fearful or thankful, we will never know. The motive was buried along with the bowl, and only one was eventually unearthed. Also in the Gweithdy is another example of ancient craftsmanship. The Cerrig Adridion crown is one of the earliest examples of Celtic art in Britain. This interpretation, based on the fragile fragments, imagines how it may have been worn. The etched bronze, riveted onto leather, forms a dazzling headpiece, perhaps worthy of a mounted warrior. Decorated with palm leaf and lotus flower designs, neither known to be abundant in the Welsh hills, they tell the story of a tribe migrating from continental Europe to the British Isles, bringing with it one of the great legacies of the Celts, their art. Elaborate, intricate, and woven within these etched swirls are indicators of who they were and how they lived. 2,400 years on, such ceremonial regalia and status symbols continue to play a significant part in our lives. Crowns are still used to bestow power upon totemic beings. We are roused by flags and anthems, stirred by communal memories. Our tribal instincts are still intact. We are bellicose defenders of soil and resources, as were the ancient Celts. St Fagans has been called a monument to modern museum democracy because thousands of visitors and volunteers are involved. On site there are ancient artifacts, but here in this beautiful medieval royal court you can see brand new creations, like this wall hanging behind me, which was designed by school children local to the original court. It depicts scenes from the Mabinogion, a collection of ancient mythological tales. And you can just imagine those storytelling sessions of yore. They'd use this kind of hanging as prompts. Here you see Bendigeidfran, the giant, lying down so that his men can cross over this river in Ireland. Hafo Ben, byd bont. This gallery is home to some of the most contemporary objects on site, and the oldest. In 1972 in Powys, an ancient burial site was discovered by a farmer in one of his fields. Within it, the star find was a complete skull, a very rare discovery, and the forensic reconstruction of the skull revealed a face of 6,000-year-old man. And as he stares back at me across 200 generations, I feel a strong sense of familiarity. This is no hulking caveman. He looks like one of us. Any differences would lie in his life experience and outlook, cultural distinctions we can only deduce today. The skull reveals no obvious cause of death, although it does tell us something about the man. His teeth were in good condition, but his nasal bones were slightly crooked, possibly due to a violent break. And he suffered from an inflammatory scalp disorder, perhaps the result of malnutrition, infection, or an infestation of head lice. The bones of his skull had also failed to fuse completely, the result of an inherited condition, which would have caused him no inconvenience, but would have given him a broader forehead than normal for the time, and a dimpled chin. So what secrets does this ancient man who died in his mid-20s continue to keep? What gods did he worship? Did he enjoy a place of honour in his society? Did he amass wealth? Did he find love? The eternal concerns of all people must surely have occupied him. What we do know is that he was buried with 6 others at a time of some conflict and threat. One of the people buried with him had an arrow tip lodged in his rib. The people who built this communal tomb may have had some traditions that would seem strange to us now, but their major ceremonies, commemorating the milestones of birth, life, and death, were much the same. What would he make of attempts to recreate his likeness? Would he be grateful for the immortality we've conferred upon him? Would he even recognize his own face, as he may not have seen it properly during his entire life? Perhaps he once caught a glance of himself in the dark, rippling waters of a lake, his image distorted by an imperfect medium, as ours is by time. From the ancient to the modern, this stunning Hindu statue made in Cardiff by artists from India for Wales Puja Committee is just 18 years old. But the origins of this deity go back centuries. This is Durga, invincible mother goddess. Here she rides a lion into battle. Created by the gods when evil threatened the universe, she can stand against and fight dark forces, quite appropriate for our times. Here artists prepared Durga statues for the festivities, and these are eco-friendly idols made from clay, papier-mâché, straw and wood, then dressed with jewels and a sari. The most critical step is the painting of the eyes of the goddess. Wherever you stand, her eyes should stare into you. It takes a steady hand to get this right. A statue can take 40 days to complete, and if in India, it would be placed in the Ganges, post-puja festivities. Today, a dwindling number of craftspeople are taking up idol making, yet the work of a goddess is never done. The first known contagion idol is recorded around the time of the Justinian plague in 541 AD. In 2020, a new goddess was invoked, the Corona Devi. In St Fagans, there are also new items being readied for exhibition. In the Collections Access Centre, they're capturing history as it happens. Hello, Nazir.
Hi, Cerys.
Lovely to meet you. Yeah, I'm fine. Tell me more about what's afoot here.
So this is a collection from the Black Lives Matter demonstration outside the Senate in July.
So did you just go out and tap them on the shoulder and say, give me your placard?
No, we actually went on. Well, I was actually part of the activism in terms of the Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
and we went on stage and we've asked everyone, the National Museum of Wales is here to really support them, and one of the ways that we could really support them is capturing their experience on that day, and we were just overwhelmed with the generosity of the communities and how much they really wanted to give to the museum, but not only that, to be represented and heard. Every placard has a story behind it, and an individual behind it, and it's about really recording that individual's experience and lived experience, and also for them to actually say why it matters and why taking part in this history at the moment is so important to them.
And these are really iconic symbols of this change that we're feeling at the moment in 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Absolutely.
I love that you're not just going to collect the placards, but that you're going out collecting the stories and the voices of the people behind the placards. It's so powerful. Tell me more about that.
I think it's really important that our visitors and our communities not only see the placards as a portal to a connection between our visitors and the people behind these placards, but for them, I think there's something important when a person actually talks about and records their oral experience. I think it in itself, it's such a powerful tool to use, but also it's not diluted, it's authentic, and it's coming from them, and I think they need to own that space.
You know, people have traditionally associated museums with the past, but here we are with a collection of symbolic items of history in the making. Is that typical of modern museums?
It's really important because we are living through history at the moment, where we've seen a wave of change in terms of social, economical, and also in terms of social justice, and with the organisations such as the Black Lives Matter, it has become internationally. So we're seeing this wave of international change and movement. So it's really important that we collect as much as possible for the future and for our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, to ensure that they know exactly what happened at this moment.
I'm sorry to have to ask you this, but which one of these is your personal favourite? Do you have a favourite?
I wouldn't say favourites, but the one that really stood up for me was about, we talk about pandemic and we hear about, the coronavirus, COVID-19. It's this one here. I think racism is also a pandemic, and I think that is the most powerful. I mean, they're all powerful in their own sense of it, but that really stands up to me. It's this one. That racism is a pandemic.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Can I show you mine? It's Dr. Martin Luther King. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Absolutely.
Amen.
It's a wonderful feeling coming here to St Fagans as we tentatively open up to the world of arts and cultures again, and fascinating to be here without the usual sounds of school children and families. It's as if the ghosts of the past were louder somehow. But what's heartening is that the museum has grown and evolved. I mean, I was a little girl when I first came here, but I leave today as enchanted as I was back then, bewitched by this heady brew of community, creativity, ancestry, and progress.